We thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands and the gentleman from Texas for their service to the nation and for leading the Congressional Black Caucus special orders. It's always important for the voices of the Congressional Black Caucus and the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Mr. Richmond of Louisiana, to be heard. And both Ms. Plaskett and Mr. Veazey have accepted the challenge and the call, and I want to tell them or express to them my greatest appreciation for the leadership that they are showing. I want to start my remarks again with, it may be hometown pride, but I like the headline of the Houston Chronicle that says, "Powerful Together." The numbers have not yet been fully calculated, but we know upwards of 1 million and maybe over 1 million persons around the nation, and then they added individuals from foreign countries far and wide. And I would take by this title that represents, Mr. Speaker, the peaceful protests. I want to say that again. In fact, I might want to say it 2 times. Peaceful protests, nonviolent protests that occurred on a Saturday, expressing the view of what America is really about. And I say that to my colleagues. They're about what the Congressional Black Caucus is about. And I believe our chairman made the point that we come from very diverse districts representing people of many racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and as well economic backgrounds, that we are the voice of reason and the conscience of this Congress. We fight against poverty. But we have PhDs and lawyers, judges, we have business persons, and they, by and large, Mr. Speaker, are charitable individuals who believe in social justice. And that is why we come with a sense of privilege, if you will, to be able to speak about what America truly is. Yesterday at the Community of Faith, under the leadership of Bishop James Dixon, I gathered for a prayer for the nation. Mr. Speaker, I did not dissect it. I did not eliminate the White House. I did not point out members of Congress, call them by name. I said a prayer for the nation. And that included the White House. It included individuals in the Congress and the Senate. And we had international representation, the Consul General of Pakistan. We had imams. We had individuals who worship on Saturday, Sabbath. We had people who spoke Spanish, people who spoke obviously English, and we gathered to pray for the nation. And that is what I think is represented in the message or the title of the New Deal for Black America. It needs prayer because it is not reflective, although well-intentioned. I'm not sure who may have advised the administration, but it does not speak to the wideness of diversity of the African-American population, African-American communities in this nation. And so I want to speak very briefly on questions of health care and justice. And I would like to say that in the safe communities of which the administration or the president has offered his New Deal, he says, we will make our communities safe again. Every poor African-American child must be able to walk down the street in peace. Safety is a civil right. We will invest in training and funding both local and federal law enforcement operations to remove the gang members, drug dealers, and criminal cartels from our neighborhoods. The reduction of crime is not merely a goal, but a necessity. In that, there is no mention of ending gun violence or looking at sensible gun safety regulations or laws, of which we've asked. I introduced Gun Violence Reduction Resources Act, which really answered Republicans' cry for enforcing the law, to add to the ATF to enforce the penalties against those who use guns wrong. In particular, the perpetrator in Mother Emanuel should not have been able to get the gun, but he was, because the gun dealer was so easy and quick to sell it, even though he had not gotten an affirmation by ATF. That's the one, and I would argue that it's because they did not have enough personnel. He also seems to categorize that every poor child has to walk down the streets. We want every child to walk down, and as I said, our community is very diverse. He then says equal justice under the law. We will apply the law fairly, equally, and without prejudice. There will be only one set of rules and not a two-tiered justice. Equal justice also means the same rules for Wall Street. So I quickly want to offer these points before I yield the floor. Number one, we're not all impoverished, but I join my colleagues in ending poverty. African Americans want the same thing as Barbara Jordan said when asked, what do your people want? It's the same thing that all America wants. And yes, we do want opportunities, but we do have to be more forceful for issues that are relevant. We have seen nothing in Mr. Trump's statement of a New Deal for America to deal with sentencing reduction and ending mandatory minimums. We see nothing about working with police departments that have found themselves, who've fallen upon bad times and have a plague of bad actors, even though we respect and honor police. And so the Law Enforcement Integrity Act that John Conyers and myself introduced has to do with correcting the issue of training and the improper interaction of police and community. And I would offer to say that the nominee for the Attorney General is completely opposed to addressing any questions of bad behavior on behalf of bad actors and bad officers. And in fact, he opposed consent decrees like the one in Ferguson and Baltimore that were only positive, welcomed by the police departments to help them do a better job at policing the community. Prison reform to change the matrix of prison, gun violence prevention that I've already mentioned, and health care access that are truly crucial to all of us. Let me also indicate a changing of the matrix of juvenile justice. We want to reauthorize the Juvenile Black Grant Accountability Act, but more importantly, we want to change how we're dealing with juveniles. We want to change from the idea of them being, if you will, punished versus incentives. Finally, let me offer to say that 2 senators in the other body have offered a new matrix on health care. I understand there are some proposals here. I would say that we see that we can't have unity. We don't have any replacement. And what is being offered by the senators is health savings accounts, which we know are not realistic. And so I'd offer to the President that there are many ways of looking at serving all of America, including African Americans. It is not listening to your own voice. It is helping us change the matrix for juveniles, change the matrix for those who are incarcerated, mandatory minimums, the way police and community work, at the same time respecting them, but more importantly, it's listening and working with members who have real life experiences in some of the issues that will make this country continue to be the greatest country in the world. I yield back, and I thank the gentlelady for her courtesies.
Thank you so much to the Congresswoman from Texas.